welcome back. I am so happy to see those eyes of yours open. How are you? How are you feeling? Yeah, tired. A little confused. Don't quite know who I am. It's normal. Do you remember anything? More or less, yeah. Yeah, Delvin dared you to go into Stoldor's Grove, which he should have known far better than to ever do. Don't worry, I took care of him. He is safe and sound. He didn't get quite as sick as you. He's been around here for much longer than you have and has been drinking all of my potions, which, thankfully for him, have been laced with all sorts of good protection. Unthankfully for you, that means he thought it would be safe for you. Yeah. As I was saying, he's been taken care of. He's feeling a little bit ill, but nowhere near in your state. I don't think he'll be coming to visit here anytime soon. Actually, I think he's probably going to avoid me for the next 10 years or so. Yeah. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad at all. He deserved every ounce of my wrath that he got. You really have no idea what kind of danger you were in, do you? Well, you've been out for 7 days. Yeah. After you two went to the grove, all I could gather from him is that instantly you were overcome by a cloud of marionettes of the grove, and you were breathing it in. You started hacking. I think you were coughing up a bit of blood. I'm not sure, I didn't see any on your garments, but at least he realized soon enough what danger you were in, and I guess started dragging you over to me instantly. It's not too far off. It's about a 15-20 minute fast-paced walk, but I think it took a little longer since he was practically dragging you by the end. He said you passed out on the road before you got to me. You remember walking, you just don't remember coming in. Yeah. Well, you're out of the worst of it now. That's the good news. Bad news is you're probably gonna have a bit of a recovery yet, and at least your fever's broken. That hasn't come back in the week that you've been unconscious. You have had a few chills and shivers, I suppose some nightmares too, based on your crying. Yeah, I can give you a tonic today before you fall back asleep to help with the nightmares, okay? Probably still a bit dizzy, nauseated. How do you feel about eating something? Well, I've got some broth here for you. If you don't mind, I'd like to get you to try some. I know it probably doesn't sound good right now, but you really do need to get something in your system. If you're Delvin's new hire, you must have met Branwen by now. The cook and general gossip monger at the Cracked Chalice. You haven't had her cooking. Well, then there is hope for me yet. That woman can put anyone to shame. My cooking is nowhere near as good as hers, but it'll fill you up. It'll get some nutrients in that stomach of yours that sorely needs it. Try a little bit for me, please. Okay, here you go. Another. How is it? too salty. Well, we each have our strengths, I suppose. One more, please. I know you probably don't want any, but we must get something in you. I'll set this aside. If you want any more, you just let me know, okay? Okay. There. That should help settle that for a bit, okay? You want to know more information about the grove. Darling, you really should be resting right now. I know you've been asleep for 7 days, but you're probably going to have to sleep for a few more to get those effects out of your system. You're not going to sleep until you are stubborn. Well, how about this? What if you promise me to try to get some rest? I will recount to you the tales of Stoldor's Grove. But if you start feeling the slightest bit sleepy, you let yourself nod off, and I'll pick up where we left off when you wake up, okay? Good. It's a deal. Thankfully for you, I was doing a bit of research, documenting your situation. It's been a while since we had anyone foolishly go into the grove, so I figured for history's sake. Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, no one goes there. With good reason. You really aren't from around here, are you? Well, to give you an idea of how serious it is, there's a piece of prose that gets passed down from generation to generation. I looked it up just so I'd have it to show you. Blood spilled, wars waged, for many years untold, till a cursed weapon became unleashed from magic's forbidden trove. No man, blade, beast, and all the secrets they keep lie with he, that king of caprice, down in the shadows of Stoldor's Grove. It's passed as a warning from generation to generation to remind them of what happened there and why it is imperative that no one travel there. Even I only go in maybe once every 5-10 years, depending on how adventurous I'm feeling. And I go in with every kind of protection I possibly can, laced with potions, armed with wards and enchantments. And then I burn any article of clothing I had on when I get back. You're lucky to be alive. Well, I suppose I have to start at the beginning then. Stoldor was a sorcerer. He is the king of caprice mentioned. He was a brilliant man, a madman, some would say, but brilliant nonetheless. He was my teacher. Oh, I age myself in saying so. It's odd, it seems like everyone who comes in my door these days needs some sort of story from my past. A long, long, long time ago, before I was ever born, there was a war that had waged for years and years. The land then wasn't what you know of it today. History has somehow lost the important bits. No one seems to even care why the war was on, who was fighting. They just care that it ended, and how it ended. You would think we would want to know to learn from our mistakes, but how silly of me to think so. The war spanned all species, all races. It had enveloped anything and everything. Our one little patch over here on the coast of Havenmoor wasn't quite the coast at the time. There was more land then, and on that land there was a citadel. During that time, how does one explain? The citadel was to train people like me. Back in those days, sorceresses were more common than they are now. Still very rare, mind you, but yes, the technical definition of a sorcerer or sorceress is someone born to a species typically not holding magic. As I was saying, back in those days, when a mage's magic was discovered, if they were a sorcerer or sorceress, they were typically removed from their family and brought to the citadel for training. It was an imperfect answer to an imperfect question. I know it seems cruel to remove a child from their family like that, but when your family owns farmland and discovers that you have the power to control the weather, would they not ask you again and again and again to bring the rain? Or hold off the storm, help grow the crops, provide a little more sun? When your family owns a shop and they discover that you can turn ordinary materials into gold and silver and precious gems, would they not ask you to do it again and again and again? And would you, the child, not understand what responsibilities you take on in doing so? Would you, the child, not understand that there is a limit to what you can do, that you will approach burnout hard and fast? You will wreck yourself and your world. Would the families understand that? Or when their son says he can no longer summon a wind or a light rain, would the farmer beat him until he tried again? When the shopkeeper's daughter says she cannot turn that into rubies and diamonds anymore, would they not lock her away like some prize golden goose until she could do it once more? In all things there must be balance. What do you think happens to the local area when one child summons the rains and the winds and the sun? Does it not throw off the entire land? What happens when one child spits out rubies and emeralds in her wake? Does it not have the power to destroy the entire local economy? Like I said, imperfect answer to an imperfect question. The citadel was meant to protect the children from the misfortunes that could befall them, from family that didn't understand the power, the responsibility of wielding it, and it was meant to protect those families from themselves. Occasionally, there were families who did it right. They were beautiful, celebrating their children's gifts, but they were rare. So, all the sorcerers and sorceresses went to the citadel. When I was sent, Stoldor was my teacher. You're all assigned a main teacher. It was obvious even back then that I had a gift larger than most. He was brilliant. He was a phenomenal instructor. The control I have over my power now, the understanding I have of the balance it requires, is all due to him. And then one day he disappeared. Not a trace to be found. Which is quite impressive considering there is a full citadel full of very nosy, inquisitive, and intelligent mages. He was gone for so many years. A mage's training isn't done until they reach, depending on when they started, mid-20s, early 30s. It requires many, many years. I think he disappeared. Oh, that was so long ago. 4, 5 years before I would have graduated. No, I technically never graduated. That's why my cloak is green. Back when there were more of us, we could identify each other based on our cloaks. Each mage, each sorcerer or sorceress typically has one magical affinity. Those were identified with cloak color so that our instructors knew what to look out for as they trained us, even if they didn't quite know our names. You try having a whole school full of little children learning to control elements and nature and healing, and you need every help you can get. When you graduate, you get a purple cloak. That's how people knew in those days who the mages were. It became our downfall. An obvious calling card. We couldn't have known then, but I wonder how many would have made it if we hadn't worn them. I'm getting ahead of the story, though. My green cloak. Nature magic. Well, it seems obvious, but do you really know why it's green? With all of the plants and flora and fauna I've constantly found my fingers in, you end up staining everything green when you're younger. So it's easier to have a cloak that is already green. What color do you think the fire mages wore? Red or orange? They wore varying shades of dark gray to black. When you're a fire mage, you get soot everywhere. It's easier to keep a cloak clean if it's already that color. And you suppose water was blue. What happens when a cloth is washed over and over and over again? The fabric color leaches. It fades. Theirs were in varying shades of very light blue to gray, like the sea on a stormy day. Healers wore white. They were constantly purifying and purging things from people and animals and plants, and when you purify, you leach the color from something. Well, if you're learning and not careful. You could give them any color of cloak you tried, but they would constantly have blotches of color missing if they had messed something up. It was easier to give them white. Bearing a purple cloak signified that you had control over your magical affinity. Oh, where was I though? It's been so long since I've remembered these. I find myself getting distracted in the fonder memories. Right. Stoldor. He disappeared for many years. No sight of him. In the last few years I had him as an instructor. Well, it became apparent that he wasn't quite okay. I don't blame him, really. Not for that. The war waged before I was born, and I can't imagine the number of loved ones, of friends, of acquaintances he lost. His entire home was enveloped by it. I think he reached a point where it broke him entirely. Most of what we know now, we know after finding a journal of his. There's no easy way to admit what my teacher did. He found a way to break magic. To use it against itself somehow. To conjure and collide and shatter. The two armies, the main two armies, converged on a battlefield years after his disappearance. It's now speculated that he arranged it. There were letters found that no side ever claimed, sent from one general to another, essentially luring the two armies to that place. It took years of careful, meticulous planning. Years to think about the consequences. Years to choose to proceed anyway. All the main players were on that battlefield. He saw to it. When those armies converged, he was there. In the middle of it all. when he conjured that unforgivable blast. It was a corruption of magic, a decay of what it was meant to be at its very core. It shook the land. The citadel that we were trained at was on the coastline. We received a letter from a mysterious, unknown source a few days before the final battle, telling us that something was coming and we needed to flee. Some of us did. Some of us felt magic's pull, magic's warning. Run. Leave. Flee. Something terrible is going to happen. But some of us didn't. Some of us stayed behind. The boy who could summon the storms. The girl whose touch could turn anything precious and valuable. They stayed behind. When Stoldor unleashed that vile thing, the land around him heaved. It tore off and broke. It ate away. The land fell into the sea. Men, blade, and beast all lie with he, the king of caprice. Havenmoor didn't used to be the coast. It is now. And the grove, Stoldor's grove, is the only remaining shred of land that magic spread to. It's contained mages like myself and others. As we fled, we felt it. Those that had gotten out flung our power backwards to protect the land from what we could. It wasn't enough. People thought we did it. All they knew was that the terrible, terrible power had been unleashed that day, and that they saw mages flinging their power out to the sea where the land crumpled beneath the waves. I mentioned the purple cloaks earlier. We were hunted down. When people panic, there's no real time to explain that we had protected them and not just murdered thousands. so many lives needlessly lost. That's why there are so few of us today. There are some towns that still hold fear. I lost many friends that day. Continued to lose many over the years. That's why I keep my green cloak instead of adopting a purple one. One, I never got the chance to graduate fully, but it helped me blend in better. It was enough that any surviving mage could see it and spot it and know what it meant, but it wasn't as obvious as a purple cloak. It allowed me to survive where others did not. No, not a happy tale. The magic in Stoldor's Grove is corrupted and decayed. The creatures there, the plants there, they're different than they should be. The ones that have learned to survive there are twisted, tainted. Legs where there shouldn't be legs. Patterns that don't exist anywhere else. The spiders even weave different webs than they should. The only good that came from that day is that the war ended. It's also what started the onset of the council being formed. Individuals from all sorts of walks of life coming together to keep an eye on the mages. Keep an eye on the comings and the goings. To ensure that what happened with Stoldor could never happen again. I think they leave that little slice, that grove, to remind us why they're here. But that's a tale for another time. I do go into the grove. I did mention that. I'm one of the few old enough that I can outlive the decay in a way. If you let the magic decay long enough, it becomes neutralized in a way. Fascinating discoveries. Excellent for potion making. Mostly poisons, though. I do make poisons. But I rarely go. It's just not worth it. You must be getting tired, my dear. No. No more stories for tonight. You need to rest. Here. I think tomorrow maybe you'll have enough energy to get up and move around. I'll be here with you. I'll get you better, okay? Don't you worry. I won't let that grove hurt anyone ever again.